Hello everybody. It is a very proud privilege to present to you this topic of systematic review, a beginner's guide today. I am Dr. Sai Deshpande, Associate Professor in the Department of Prosthodontics, BSPM Dental College, Nagpur. And we have recently seen that in the postgraduate curriculum, systematic review is becoming mandatory as the library dissertation, and increasingly there is a need for disseminating knowledge about how exactly to proceed with this particular topic. So the learning objectives of this session are to understand what exactly is systematic review, to understand the importance of systematic review, and learn the process of doing a systematic review. So I'll be dealing with these three aspects one by one. Now let us first understand what is a systematic review. For that, let me take you to a normal example of any review. What is a review? So when we read a restaurant review, or when we read a book review or we read a movie review, what essentially it does is to describe that particular thing, to describe a book or to describe an experience of dining out in a restaurant or to describe about how the movie was. So this is exactly what we are doing here, is reviewing a particular thing in a systematic fashion. The methodology is different. However, the aim is the same, to review and give a summary of how exactly it is the phenomena is. So let us go back the memory lane and revise a bit about what are different types of research. So there are two basic types of research. First is primary research, where it involves the basic research and applied research, and secondary research, which builds up on this primary research which has already been done. So primary research will have basic research and applied research, patient-oriented research in form of clinical trial, epidemiological or observational research, behavioral research, outcomes research, health services research, so on and so forth. The secondary research takes out the data from primary research and builds up on recommendations and evidence-based practice guidelines. So secondary research involves literature review, narrative review, systematic review, and meta-analysis. So the research we are talking about today is secondary research. Systematic review and meta-analysis falls in the category of secondary type of research, because here we are not conducting any experiment or noting down the values and observations and all that, but we are pooling the data of already done studies and taking out some meaning out of it, right? So now we have seen different types of research. Let us talk about different types of study designs. There are two basic study designs: descriptive and analytic. Descriptive, cross-sectional and qualitative, and analytical are again divided into experimental and observational. Experimental, again we have a randomized control trial and different types of clinical trials in that section. And observational analytical involve cohort, cross-sectional and case control studies. So it is out of the scope of this particular session to talk about these in detail about these study designs, but just to have a recap, I have included this particular slide. So these are the different types of study designs, and how do we identify a particular study design? Let us talk briefly about that. The first question we want to ask ourselves is, what was the aim of the study? If it is simply to describe a population, that is a descriptive study. And if it is to quantify the relationship between factors, it is an analytical study. The second question is, if it is analytical, was the intervention randomly allocated? If the answer is yes, it is a randomized control trial. If the answer is no, it is an observational study. For observational study, the main types will then be depending upon the timing of the measurement of the outcome. So again, the third question is, when were the outcomes determined? Some outcomes are determined sometime after the exposure or the intervention. That is cohort study. If it is at the same time as the exposure or intervention, it is a cross-sectional study. And if the outcomes are determined before the exposure, it is a case control study. So this is a very useful guide to identify types of studies. Now, what are we doing right now, or what has been done traditionally is that we have a situation, then we have some intervention, and then we get the outcome. And on the basis of this particular fashion, we practice the medicine. We've been doing it traditionally. But what happens is we encounter with many questions. And like, for example, do all endodontically treated teeth need post and core and crowns? Suppose we get a patient of post endodontic restoration. When to go for a crown and when to go for a post and core is a question, and there should be definite guidelines to answer this. We have been hearing that you should not use cantilevers, and we should replace all the teeth. Is it correct in all situations? Does it hold true? Complete caries removal, use of pit and fissure sealants, border molding face bows and split casts are a must. Antibiotic prophylaxis in PGR. So all prosthetic joint replacement. So all these domains need serious search for evidence as to what are the guidelines which are there, uh, which can guide us to give a very predictable treatment outcome for the patient. So even though we have been practicing traditionally that we have a situation, we give a intervention and there is an outcome, but the analysis of outcome in a particular fashion is important, and to look for the evidence of what works and what doesn't work, or what is needed and what is not needed, is also very important. And therefore the science, as it progresses, we should also reflect upon ourselves that what are the advances or what are the recent techniques, tools which can tell us that what we have been doing in our day-to-day practice, is it working, is it the correct way of doing it? And that question is extremely important for the well-being of the patients and uh, the further development of the scientific community. So when we talk about this evidences or evidence-based practice, right now what we are practicing is that there is a patient who has needs and preferences. He comes to the dentist. Dentist has some expertise, but that doesn't guide the treatment. There is also a third leg to this, and that is scientific evidence. And when all these three come together, only then we can take out a predictable treatment outcome and provide it for the patient. And this is how we should progress. So this evidence-based dentistry has a pyramidal structure, and when we see the base of the pyramid, it starts with the in vitro research. Then we go on to animal studies. Then there are ideas, editorials, and opinions, and other things. Then we have case reports, case series, case control studies, cohort studies, a randomized control trial, and the top of the pyramid is systematic review and meta-analysis. So this is the hierarchy of evidence, and as we move ahead or up in the pyramid, the quality of the evidence increases. So if I have an in vitro research that tells me something, and the same topic I have a systematic review and meta-analysis which gives me some information, obviously the information from the systematic review and meta-analysis will be much more important as for the patient decision making, clinical decision making, than an in vitro research, right? So this is the importance of systematic review. So now we have come to the proper definition of what exactly is the systematic review. Let us understand. A systematic review is a review of clearly formulated question that uses systematic and explicit methods to identify, select, and critically appraise relevant research, and to collect and analyze data from the studies that are included in the review. So this is the Prisma statement, and this is the definition, word to word definition of what is a systematic review. Now this particular evidence that we are talking about, uh, the evidence, as the bias reduces, the outcome objectivity is increased. So when we talk about the quality of the evidence, When we have less and less bias, we have good objectivity and quality of outcome is better. Now let us come to the question why systematic review is required. Like I said, it is required because we want to reflect upon ourselves as what has been observed in the clinical or scientific literature till now on that particular topic. We are reviewing that in a very systematic fashion. So it is needed to practice evidence-based dentistry for better quality of patient care. Ultimately, we are doing everything for the patient and for the community. And if we are doing this review and if we are finding out some facts which are probably difficult to understand by just looking at various studies, if we can summarize and that can change the practice guidelines, then obviously the patient and the community will be benefited immensely. Second aspect is to reduce the research wastage, because suppose a systematic review clearly tells you by very good evidence that such and such treatment is working or such and such treatment is not working, then there is no need to repeat the same studies and same designs and same population again and again. So a systematic review tells us what has already been done and what has already been established. It also tells us what has not been established and what are the gray areas or what is the knowledge gap in that particular area, and we can identify and perform research to reduce the research wastage. So there are different stakeholders here that we are talking about. There are clinicians and caregivers. There are patients and their families, and there are policymakers. So all of them will benefit from the systematic review. If you read a good systematic review, obviously you can give a good treatment. Caregivers also will be benefited because they know what is the standard treatment care. Patients and their families will be informed in a better way, more scientific way, as to what the treatment that has been given is gold standard or not, or still experimental. All this can be told in a very objective manner, and obviously policymakers. So all these stakeholders are benefited due to the systematic review. Now, when we see reviews per se, uh, so there are various types of review. There is a narrative review wherein the quality of evidence or the confidence is low, that we routinely perform in the form of a library dissertation or a review of literature in your final dissertation. That is a narrative review. Then there is a quick scoping review. It is more systematic than narrative review, and it gives you a broad idea as to what has been done in that area till now. Then there is a rapid evidence assessment, again better than the other two, but full systematic review stands much higher than a narrative review in terms of the confidence and quality of evidence, and therefore we'll be talking more in detail about full systematic review. Before that, let us understand the difference between narrative and systematic review, because you need to know that the library dissertation is a narrative review and how it is different from a systematic review, because we are used to doing the narrative review in our curriculum till now. So in a narrative review, the search methods are not systematic, and they are not validated, they are not peer reviewed, and in contrast to this, in evidence synthesis or in systematic review, we have a very highly structured manner as to how we are going to search for the evidence. We have inclusion exclusion criteria defined in a systematic review, whether in narrative review there is no such thing. There is a potential bias for authors to selectively include or exclude study in a narrative review. Nobody is going to question you why you have excluded this study, but you cannot do this in a systematic review, because you have a particular protocol to stick to, and if you have the studies reflected in your protocol, you have to include them and report them. The replication and updating. So replication and updating is difficult since search methodology is not reported. So if I'm doing a narrative review and someone else is doing, they might find totally different things, because I don't have a proper search strategy. Neither the person who is doing the same topic has a strategy. So there may be differences in one topic. suppose two people are doing it, they might report two different things altogether. So that is the difference between narrative review and systematic review. So let us see what is the difference between scoping review and a systematic review. In scoping review, the research question is broadly defined, and in systematic review, it is highly focused. Like for example, what is the scoping review research question? I'm giving you an example. What are the different types of treatment methodologies or treatment options for temporomandibular joint disorders? So this is a very broad question, and this may stand up to the scoping review. But systematic review is, I have to be very specific. Does occlusal equilibration is occlusal equilibration a standard treatment, or does occlusal equilibration work for reducing the symptoms of TMDs? So that is a highly focused question. I'm not being vague or I'm not being general. There is a very specific area I'm looking at. So that is a very hallmark of systematic review, highly focused. Again, inclusion and exclusion criteria are developed post hoc at study selection stage in a scoping review. And systematic review, the inclusion exclusion criteria are developed at the protocol stage. Study selection. In scoping review, all types of studies are included, and systematic review involves defined study types, and majority of them involve randomized controlled trials. The data extraction in scoping review is charts data according to key issues and themes, etc. And in systematic review, we have synthesizing and aggregation of findings in a very systematic way, and as opposed to the scoping review. Now there are different types of systematic reviews. Systematic review of intervention, systematic review of methodology, systematic review of diagnostic test accuracy, and umbrella review or overview of reviews. So these are various types of systematic review. Let me give you a few examples. So this is a systematic review, you can read here. Occlusal schemes for complete dentures. Right, so this is a evidence-based dentistry journal, and we can see that they have mentioned data sources, study selection criteria, data extraction and synthesis, and the conclusions. So you can see a conclusion over here that bilaterally balanced occlusion does not confer better quality or life satisfaction, quality of life or satisfaction, or masticatory performance and muscle activity. Thus, lingualized occlusion can be considered predictable as a predictable occlusal scheme. So this is an extremely important finding which is reported by including the randomized controlled trials or prospective studies comparing two types of occlusal schemes or different types of occlusal schemes. So this was a clinical trial. Now let us see a microscopic level study, that is osteogenic potential of dental mesenchymal stem cells in preclinical studies, a systematic review using modified Arrive and Consort guidelines. So here we have that they are studying dental stem cells based tissue engineered constructs, and they are assessing the preclinical in vivo and in vitro studies which have evaluated the efficacy of dental stem cells on bone regeneration. So no patients are involved here, and only preclinical in vivo and in vitro studies are involved. And you can see that they indicate potential use of dental stem cells in bone regeneration. However, randomized animal trials are needed before moving to clinical trials. So first example we have seen of clinical trial. This is a preclinical and in vitro. Another we will see a very typical in vitro study, in vitro systematic review. So mechanical properties of provisional dental materials, a systematic review and meta-analysis. So here we can see that all the in vitro studies have been included and they have come to the conclusion, and this is another example of a systematic review. So systematic reviews of randomized control trials, in vitro preclinical studies, all can be done and they have to follow different guidelines. Now, what exactly is being done here in this slide, you can see that the American Dental Association Center for Evidence-Based Dentistry has given expert panel recommendation on the topic of non-restorative treatment of carious lesions on primary teeth. And we can see here that the panel recommends to arrest advanced cavitated carious lesions on any coronal surface of primary teeth. They recommend the use of 38% silver diamine fluoride solution and over 5% sodium fluoride varnish. Now, this certainty of the evidence is moderate and strength of recommendation is strong. So, they have found evidence to be moderate and they are strongly recommending this particular point. And as we see on in the table, there are certain recommendations which are conditional, and where the evidence is not so strong, they're recommending it on conditions. So this is the final outcome of a systematic review. When we have evidence that is strong enough, we recommend something with very confidence. If we don't have evidence, we recommend the things with caution. So this is the final use of any particular systematic review in the literature, and we should feel very proud and privileged that if we do a systematic review and we should find out something and report it, and it may change the recommendations, it may change the way we practice, and therefore secondary research is also as important as primary research. And when we are doing this, we are definitely contributing towards the advancement of the profession.